Okay, I guess we'd like to bring this meeting to order. First thing we should do is probably pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all.
Is he watching this back? You need to see how they vote. Which one?
This camera wasn't powered up, but it helps with audio and video. But if we keep on with this and then we'll move over and try to.
Yes. Do you? Ready? Absolutely.
The first two.
Online. Well, okay, to start this off, what I'd like to do is have everybody introduce themselves so that people at home know exactly who's here. My name's Skip Viles. I'm co-chair.
Yep, John Lynch, 4 years.
I'm Ruth Keister. You catch me?
Ryan Jones.
Richard LaBelle, town manager.
Very good. We should probably move forward. All right, under the budget. I guess we start with the administration. People got the paperwork. Oh, okay, the select board has $474,200. Town manager has the same. And I guess we need to know what the budget committee would like to do.
Make a motion that we accept the same recommendation as the town manager at $474,200.
Is there a second? Do we have a second? Is there any discussion? Well, I guess the town manager would have to explain that to us.
Yeah, so primarily, I mean, I didn't look at this year versus 2 years ago. I looked at this year versus last year. Wages are your primary mover on that. Wages account for approximately 18,000 of the increase straight wage. When you take a look at total labor related costs, so that's your benefits and whatnot, that's 24,150 is the increase in the admin budget. So 24 of that is labor related. The department budget is only up 22,500, which is a result of trying to cover off on some of those increases with cuts on other lines.
I thought this, I don't know much about software, but I thought the software support total seemed high. It's for this office, right?
That's for all town-based. All of the software for which the town really operates, it's the same as it's been since 2009. It's Trio, it's your tax assessing, it's your clerk modules, it's motor vehicle registration, it's your tax billing, your sewer billing and collections, personal property.
$7,000 more than it was. Well, 3 years ago.
I don't want to say it's monopolistic, but there's 3 vendors for that. And once you commit to one of those vendors, you have all of your information, all your assessing information and whatnot. And so it's not just one of those things that you can move. You are tied to it necessarily in the cost of transition.
Vendor, excuse me, sorry.
So it's Harris Computers, and we purchased Trio software from them.
Just wondering.
Well, there's also some in every department too. You know, the library, that was one of our cost concerns. This time was software support.
Newsletter should have gone down. It was a new expense last year. We budgeted what we had thought based upon the COVID time newsletters going on. We were able to sell a couple ad spots against, but that ad sales didn't have any traction. And so we sent out, I think, 3 newsletters went out this year in that cycle. So we spread that cost out again over the 4. We also found economies of scale in that by signing on to send a year's worth of newsletters with one vendor.
Just 2 things. One, I was curious because I knew they seemed to drop down. But is that now miscellaneous, whatever we made on those ads?
The ads were used as a direct offset to the expense.
The other thing I was going to say is I have 2 post office boxes and I didn't get the last one. I thought it goes in every box. It seems funny to have missed. I have a box here and then a box way over there. Isn't it supposed to be every post office box?
Yes, I take that up with your local post office. We pay for it to be
Well, I was
delivered.
just checking to make sure it is 100% of the town.
It's that and Mercer.
Oh,
We pay for the zip code because it's the most cost effective way.
no, that was my interest.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Any more discussion?
So Tara's on but cannot speak.
She can if she elects to. He's just muted right now.
Seeing no more discussions, I guess we should vote. All those approve?
If Tara's gonna cast a vote, oh, okay, so you have to do itemized, sorry.
Oh, you want to?
I gotta do a roll call. Yeah, with somebody in line, you have to go by every member. Sorry,
So is that what you want?
sure, yes.
I,
And Tara.
There it is, like that, that's exciting.
That's unanimous.
You moving?
Moving
Go ahead.
forward, I believe we're gonna go to elected officials. And the town manager has $17,725. The select board has $17,025. I looking for a,
Make a motion that we go with the town manager's recommendation on $17,720.
Second.
okay, we have a first and a second. So now we're gonna look for a little discussion.
I was only curious about the voter machine carding.
Coding.
Yeah. Didn't we get new machines?
So those machines are property of the state of Maine. The first one, the second one is on loan to us. Then we have for local elections, if we use those machines for local elections, there's a cost for us. So we keep that in the budget because it is largely a more efficient way to process ballots.
Do I see any more discussion? Did she hear us on that?
I vote so. When you call for a vote.
She raised her hand, no.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm gonna call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Don't you have to?
Yeah, and she's in there.
Okay, with that vote being taken, we're gonna move on to tax assessing. Tax assessing is 26,800 by the town manager, 26,800 by the select board.
Make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation of 26,000.
Seconded.
We have a first and a second. Now we're open for discussion. No,
straightforward.
what's that?
Said it's straightforward.
Okay, well, seeing no,
Like that.
seeing no discussion, it's time for a vote. Aye.
Aye.
I,
Public safety is our next up. Town manager's request, $137,400. Select board says $137,400.
Make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the town manager, $137,400.
We have a first and a second. Open for discussion.
I have a question about the hydrant usage. Is that because the cost of water has gone up or?
That's directly tied to the operating expenses. The budgetary expenses for the water district combined with their rate increase, which is 10% as of January 1st.
Do I see any more discussion? Seeing none? Let's vote. Aye.
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 Now we're into the fire department. Town manager's request is $344,120. Select board, $344,120.
Make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation of $340,000.
And we have a second. Open for discussion.
Presentation before was very good.
Thank you. Thank you. I did generate a simple summary page for you. If you want, I brought it up for all. But it basically tells you what's up and what's the reason for the increases in the budget. So if you'd like that, I think you have all the details in the world there. But I'd be glad to go through that if you have interest.
Also.
Right.
We're in the fire department.
Right. Another budget.
But I
They had
think
received your spreadsheet that you presented.
Yeah.
Select
Yeah,
board
in
in the
this
packet.
summary page. Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay, we're ready for a vote. Aye.
Aye.
Next article is Public Works. Public Works, $770,750. That is a town manager's request. Select board, $770,750.
I'll make a motion that we accept the town manager's request.
I have a first and a second. Open for discussion.
I wondered about the rental equipment.
And it being so high.
Or what it is, yeah.
So rental equipment sometimes is a compactor. We don't have what they call
It's a whack.
whacker packer to properly
Compact.
compact culverts and whatnot over the culverts. Also, what was not properly booked in there, I don't know if it reflects on your spreadsheet, but there was the rental of the equipment for stockpiling winter salt sand. That usually gets booked under winter roads. And it was not properly in the system, so that's an adjustment that's been made, but primarily it's it could be a chipper or a whacker packer, things like that. Just something that we don't
But
have.
it's
in-house.
totally related to roads.
Correct.
Any more discussion? Do I see any more discussion?
Seminars and training
Mhm.
gone. Is that learning to use the new equipment or something?
No, seminars and training
Quite
is
a change.
largely related to a new foreman, but what also was booked in there was $1,400 in OSHA violations. So that's the one-time expense that won't recur, hopefully.
What did it cost us to fix the violations?
Nothing. Nothing, there were internal adjustments or things that we had the ability to do with equipment and manpower and health.
like another software one that was kind of high. But that's tracking the vehicles or something?
So you have computer track, the vehicle tracking, which is approximately $300 a month. And then you also have the IT contract, which is across all departments. And they have a computer up there that gets monitored that has never been monitored before.
So it's $300 per vehicle?
No, for the fleet, it's about $50. And that went from 200 to 300 when we installed dash cam.
I would imagine that is a credit on your vehicle coverage.
No,
Insurance.
it's
Your
not.
insurance doesn't, okay, it's just.
No,
required.
it's, we do it voluntarily since we had no longer employee here, but they hit a road and ripped off the front end. And so that was $50,000-$60,000 problem. And so this flags us, we don't have to watch it. The program monitors and it's excessive acceleration, excessive braking, impact, things like that. They're only outward facing. We could go inward facing and it would flag you for smoking and cell phones and driver inattention, but the invasion of privacy, union difficulties. Potential.
Do I see any more discussion?
Is Bigelow Hill paving part of that? I sent a chat message, Richard, if you can hear
Oh,
me.
I'm sorry. So, no, the paving on Bigelow Hill Road, as it stands right now, would be covered under the federal grant that I was able to secure. That's the $2.5 million congressionally directed spending. And then if not, it would be considered under the regular road reserve account with the request this year of $750,000. Not from this general operating budget.
Thank you.
On that same note, what about Wilder Hill?
The Wilder Hill Road, this end is out for bid right now. Bids closed tomorrow. We'll open bids tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully award it at the meeting on the 22nd, and then the contractor will hopefully be right out in the spring to fix it, but they'll have until the mid-end September to complete that project substantially.
How much will that cost?
I don't
Any
know.
idea?
I
More
don't.
afternoon.
That's right.
No estimates, yeah.
I think I've heard some discussion of this before, but signs, is that to do with? I get confused whether it was the fire department or was this about signs on the river? What's the sign expenditure? Public Works,
It's stop signs, speed limit signs, street signs, anything that you see for roadway signs is what this purchases.
so we spent $3,500 this year and then we need 2,500 is just
It's an ongoing.
to be saved next year.
Nope, we will spend all of that. Yep, it's a recurring expense. Every new development that you get is a new road name. When things get knocked down, they get faded or people steal them. It's not perfect, and like I say, we're not gonna do it, but I don't believe in that. I mean, if somebody needs to call 911 and the first responder doesn't know that street, we have a lot of obscure streets now. It's important that we properly sign. And I have been adding ones and twos here, like on Route 8 in your higher speed zones. In increasing the height of those signs for visibility. We're also moving to the blue backing for public road, for private roads, and the green for public, so that folks are aware of what they might be exposed to for liability. But that's not a proactive expense, that's an as needed. We're replacing in that manner. Lead compactors primarily is their expense, but there's a large number in there, 7,500. I'm not sure if on your sheets it shows that, but the $7,500 that was for stockpiling of winter salt and sand that gets allocated to winter roads.
Do I see any more discussion? Everybody, okay? Let's vote. Aye. Cemeteries.
Make a motion that we accept the request of the town manager, $8,650.
I'll second that.
I'm on the committee, so I will. You do a wonderful job.
Do I see any discussion? We have a second, did I see a second?
Yes.
Okay, we have a first and second, yes. Okay, any discussion?
I was on the committee too. I think we're allowed to discuss before we vote.
That's your pleasure.
Seeing no discussion. I'm gonna call it to a vote. Aye.
Aye.
You can still vote.
Are you casting in favor or abstaining?
I would say no, I'm in favor, but I didn't think we could vote if we're on the committee. It doesn't seem right.
Yes or an abstention?
I
Thank you.
would like more.
Okay, moving on. We're now into general assistance. Town manager is asking for 5,600. Select board agreed to 5,600. Do I have a first?
I said to make a motion for 5,600.
I'll
Yes.
second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I just wondered, what happens to the funds that are not spent? Are they put in a contingency fund or?
They lapse into surplus.
Okay. So,
They go into surplus and then that allows you later on in budget discussions, we'll talk about how much money do you want to pull out of surplus to offset commitment, and that's where that money goes.
Do I see any more discussion?
So Richard,
Mhm.
the food pantry, there's no donation or anything that comes out of this fund, or there was no request?
If there's a request for nonprofit support, it would customarily come out of the local philanthropy budget a little bit further down the line.
Thank you.
This is people that come to you or that you know or need or.
This is a state-run program that we're responsible for administering, so it's, the state sets the maximum allowable income and maximum level of assistance. Folks have to qualify for it, threshold is very low, it's meant to be a subsidy on an emergency basis for folks that participate in all the programs already and have unusual circumstances, so. As you can see by the budget, very few folks ever qualify or have a legitimate emergency that we would help them with. And then it's reimbursed by the state at 70%.
Do I see any more discussion? With that being said, we'll vote. Aye.
aye.
Next is recreation. Town manager has 34,150. Select boards approved 34,150. Do I hear a first and a second?
Make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation of 34,000.
We have two members of the recreation board on this committee. Just for the record, are you on it? Yeah. I just, for the record.
Do I see a second? I see a second. We're open for discussion.
I had a question about equipment rental. Was that the lighting that was down on the fields
So equipment rental is part of that, and the other part is portable toilets.
and the toilets?
Yeah. So they have renewed the request again to get the temporary lighting on the field for October. We had one set of lights that was actually donated, and then we rented 2 sets of lights. To complete. They do now in October because the sun sets so early, the soccer program, so they're able to run a little bit more into the evening. And they've had folks from out of town who've come and participated with our teams because of it.
And these are all grade school kids.
Yeah.
Grade school goes up to just grade.
Our program runs through grade 6.
It is grade 6, I didn't know. Well, it's in 6th grade.
We don't get a lot of them, but we still have kids that come and play, because they don't want that.
The wages for basketball, soccer, is that set by the coach, whoever it is, tells you what it is, or?
No, so there's pretty much the prevailing rate per game on the refs. When we look at the program director, we asked the program director to ballpark the number of hours spent in overseeing the program. And so that was, some programs take more time, baseball, softball being really the one. And then they took that figure, multiplied it times a factor of $23 an hour, and then all budgeted the stipend.
And all three of them get 23 an hour.
No, that's just the number that they use to budget the stipend for the program director.
So I just have a question up at the very top. Wages is the coordinator, I'm assuming. And then below, it's again, says basketball, soccer, baseball. That is referees or?
So you have your basketball wages. The program director does not get that much. A lot of that is your ref fees.
Oh, is your referee fee?
Correct.
Then what is the other down below?
That's the actual program expense. So
Oh,
basketball has a $1,000 allowance to buy jerseys or balls or nets or anything else they might need to run a program. They have their year-end banquet, which isn't $1,000, but that comes out of that. That's what they run their program on. So for basketball, they've estimated that the program director puts in 80 hours at 23 an hour. Soccer is 48 hours to operate that program, and baseball, softball is estimated at 130 hours to operate that program. Right now, we have Bobby Joe Welch is the program director for all three.
Richard,
Yep.
with the letters that you put in with the packet, the Parks Committee indicated that they got a better rate for portable toilets. Is that something that the Recreation Department can buddy up with, or is it the same vendor, or anything that you can share on that?
Yep, so it is the same vendor. There was the same contract that we were able to negotiate. The rec department had shorted results. They would like another portable toilet at the ball field when we're playing. Largely just due to overall cleanliness and the fact that it's located right on Route 2, and I think we're finding that people are seeing it and stopping and using it even when they're not attending rec events. So they would like an additional toilet planned for the ball field when there's activities there.
Any more discussion?
This all after school.
Yes,
That's nothing to do with 7:54.
that's correct.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, I say we vote. Aye. Next article is parks.
Okay. Sally's a nay on the rec budget.
Okay, town manager's request, 32,180. Select board approved 32,180. Looking for a first and second.
Thank you, Rebecca. I would make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation of 32,108.
And I see a second. So now we're open for discussion.
This is tie in with a letter from Parks.
So the Parks Committee last year had a difficult time getting their budget through. And I ended up guiding this group for them, I think it was maybe an hour and a half or two, and there seemed to be a lot of controversy around their request. And then there was a discussion of what are they doing with their money, what's their plan? And a lot of their things were shut down to their discouragement, so they've had 2 or 3 get-togethers to put together what they've done. Why they've done it, what they're asking for, what they're asking for, and then they've obviously got the ones, it's not under here, but their gazebo request. And then additional contribution to their capital request, and they. I don't wanna speak for them, but I think that they felt slighted after last year's process for the way that the budget had settled out, without them getting. An audience, I'll say, so that's why they compiled it, and I think that people long thought that parks were Usula Park or Usula Days. And the town over the last 2 or 3 years has added and added and added, so now they've got. You know, they've got the building in Usula Park, they've got the playground in the gazebo in Usula Park, they've got the boat launch dock, they've got the swim dock, they've got. The parking lot down at Ashland Park, they've got the building in Ashland Park. They've got the electrical bills and the internet associated with those facilities. They've got Emery Square. And you've got Riverside Park, which is not very costly, but over on Maple and River Road. But there's a lot more. We're trying to get out of this park's budget than we ever did before.
That was the thing last year, there was nobody from parks here and the budget. I mean, Johnson.
Yeah.
So it was a shock to just see it just double like that and. No, you know, it wasn't for me planning. Fire to come and say what it is and where they want it, so it's a good job, the letter is a good job. I have something, I don't know, so can we look at the letter too, because the letter impacts what's here. Because you ask questions doesn't mean you're criticizing, I just want to learn what they're doing. I'd like to talk about the Ashley Wing Family Memorial Park. What are the expenses there now?
Right now, the direct expense is electric and internet
And is that,
and portable toilets.
okay, so this is really rail trail.
Declining to answer that. That is a municipally owned park with a municipally owned building that provides that service and enhanced level of security.
I'm just trying to understand where the expenses are. So we know what that costs and what part that is, because it seems like the work over there has been done, but I understand, like, again, it's not a criticism, trying to understand what goes on. So nowhere do you ever see anything about rail trail maintenance, the growth, they seem to have to go and ask for money wherever they want. Are they not anywhere in the budget figuring that this amount is for something that we need for the rail trails? Because it's for them too. I mean, they have to go to TIF, they have to come to the select board. It's nothing in the park budget is directly
No,
for the rail trail.
no.
2 different things.
What?
Well, the rail trail and the park thing is different. The trail goes beside it.
Yeah, so they're not under any department is what I'm saying.
No, if they, in full transparency, I assume we're talking about Norridgewock Sportsman's Association.
No, I'm talking about the rail trail, but yeah.
So the town is not the owner of the rail trail, we have no maintenance responsibility. If the state of Maine asks us to partner with them, and I have resources available to me when they ask me, then we will do it. We will put town equipment on that trail, we bill out manpower, that's full on wages, fringe benefits, whatnot, and the cost of a vehicle. And then any materials that we put out, plus administrative costs of me processing that. And then we call the state and the flood to provide us with matching hours so that we're able to be fully reimbursed. And that actually includes they will reimburse us for my time that's dedicated to that. Not ever a ton, but they will pay all of that back to us. So that just runs through a grant program, and typically those expenses will come out of Public Works and then be replenished to Public Works. So there's no direct hit.
So things even like the portable toilets and everything should go back to the state of Maine. Having the rail trail run through, it seems like the town's absorbing.
So the town hadn't questioned that. I think that was even when the town put in the investment of the park and ride and all the coordination for that, it was the commitment to economic development and not the assignment of benefits. Obviously, I think that it behooves Norridgewock to have people stop, no matter the purpose for stopping, have them stop in the community.
I just think it puts a lot on the sportsmen. It's really with everything that's involved with that trail. So it just seems odd to me that there's no place that just says, besides trying to come and get some money for philanthropy, we're getting the registration taxes or whatever it is that they get. It just seems odd. But that's just a learning process.
Tara, are you voting or a question?
It's a question. The seasonal programming, that is not included into the new job position that's going to be happening. It's going to be separate. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that job description quite yet. The select board's going to be re-talking about that at their meeting tomorrow. We don't know if that's going to come to fruition, if it's going to be a funding mechanism or if it's going to be restructured. The seasonal programming is an idea that the Parks Committee has to hold more community events. So for instance, would be like a pumpkin carving event in Usula Park, where they could offer you free or subsidized pumpkins to get people down there in the fall. And obviously things like that, they could potentially happen for free if you're really pounding pavement and soliciting. But they wanted a budget by which to achieve that. And they have things like a chili cook-off and movie night in the park, things like that they've been talking about that they'd like to try to gain some public support for. So they've requested the $2,500 to see how far that would go and the level of reception that they'd get from the community.
So it isn't towards the programming, like written programming, putting together an event menu or what have you. It's something different.
Yeah, this would be for new, I'll say micro events, not like Usula Days, but like a pumpkin carving event, or I don't even know what other kinds of events that they would have.
Face painting.
They've talked about having things down in the park once a month. And so this would be their expense account for that.
Thank you.
Dock installation and removal, and I just want to understand what it is. So that's taking out every year at the end of the season, putting it in. It's nice that New Balance get equipment.
Yeah, we will have actually got another donation of $7,500 that came in late in the year to finish that project out. We'll get a little bit more groundwork. We've got signage, and then we'll host ribbon cutting grand opening in the summers.
The major search, gazebo is going to be a public discussion or something. That's not, we're not voting on that tonight.
If you want to start talking about it, you're welcome to start talking about it. I don't know if it's got the support of the select board yet. And then whether it goes on a secret ballot measure or an open town meeting, I'm unsure of that. That's still kind of up in the air.
Because it seems like we'd have to consider what goes into that besides you build it, but then you kind of have to know sound equipment and everything that light, everything that goes on afterwards. Is that going to come out of their budget?
It's include if
is it built in there now, or would it be later? Or,
pardon?
is it built into their budget now? Or?
It wouldn't be sound equipment built in. You would have your electrical upgrades. There would be a ceiling necessarily in the gazebo that would have can lights. I think the opening is candidly modeled after and designed after the one that's in Belgrade Lakes that was modeled on one in Garden. And so then there are like Belgrade's, the cupola is solid, it's got grates on it. And one of the things that they would change is they would have louvers on it. So small things like that they've learned. If that were to move ahead, it would raise the gazebo up, ideally in the same footprint. And it would have stairs on one side and have an ADA ramp on the back. It would be open, double-sided. We've learned that lesson. With music series, having it open on one side makes it really, really awkward for people that are in attendance to music events. But it also puts them in a terrible location in the evenings because that's where the sun shines. And if we had the maneuverability of going on the other side, it would make for a much more enjoyable experience. So small things like that have also been incorporated. But we wouldn't have to pay for design plans. That's something that the donor, there was a private donor that wholly paid for the improvements at Belgrade, and he was able to provide me with the plans that they used.
Do they have any walkway to get there? Because that's another problem with the current gazebos. Bumping along, it doesn't encourage people that are handicapped to get all the way over there or old or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, it's difficult. Once you start building, then you have to start paving. And I don't think that that's something that anybody really wants to do in this little park. They've talked about leveling and filling in holes to make it a smoother ride over. And it's obviously something we're gonna have to manage in the spring with the different equipment that we've had out there in the last 12 months. Whether it be trenching for electrical outlets, or the installation of ADA equipment. That will be a part of that smoothing out process, and where it is near the river, you're always gonna tend to see things divot. And it's an ongoing maintenance. So candidly, it's not really been well taken care of over the last couple of years.
I've got another question, Richard.
Yeah.
About the dock installation removal and also the boat dock. Why is the parks responsible for the swim dock and not the boat dock? Because it's my understanding that it's the town that takes in and out of the boat dock. So why wouldn't the town just take into account the swim docks?
So the pure terrain of where the swim dock is located poses a pretty significant liability to put our employees up and down over that bank. And so that's kind of been the decision, is that we don't have the capacity to do that and limit our exposure. The boat launch dock is something that pretty much gets picked up with a large piece of equipment and then set back down in close proximity, as opposed to going down a pretty substantial graded bank.
Okay, so that's hired out then?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Rental equipment. So just if I understand this tied to the last time we had this discussion a few minutes ago, the budget was 15. We spent 3150. It seems like on average we're spending 3,000 or whatever a year, and yet the department request now is 11,000.
So you'll recall this was a big sticker at the last budget committee meeting, and they did not put toilets where they wanted toilets all year long
It's
because
all about toilets.
the vast majority of it is about toilets. That's correct.
What's the rest?
I'm pulling on it right here.
Well, what I wondered is, so this year they only used 3,000 of it. Does that mean $12,000 went into the surplus account at the end?
No, because that was an underspend. They went and they utilized funds in other areas. You'll see in different lines there.
But it says actual.
Correct, but this is not a line item budget. It's used for estimating and getting your bottom line dollar. So your budget was 30,000, they spent 25. So yes, they underspent on equipment rental, but then they overspent on Usula days. They overspent 3,000 there. They overspent 2,000 on the budgeted allowance for the music series. And then your facility maintenance and repair was an additional 5,000 that came out of operating.
5,000?
Well, the spend on facility maintenance and repair was 5,061 with a budget of 1,000. And so they ended up going over in other areas. that was candidly allowed because the money wasn't spent on the little toilets.
So the toilets are a slush fund.
I'm sure that the committee would take exception to your categorization of that.
No, I meant it, and I mean, it can be. I understand how you do it. You don't know where the money's gonna go out, but it's in the end, it's just confusing when you're looking at it, and we just said that other one that. You know, goes into surplus, so you've explained it. But in the other one, it didn't go into surplus. They couldn't keep it. You asked about it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it did.
How do you decide when it goes into surplus and when the committee gets to keep it?
We're not a line item budget. The budget that you have before you is a total department budget. If you don't spend an amount that's in the line, but not a line, of facility maintenance and repair. We only use that as a budgeting tool, not as the actual budget.
So, but I think just to clarify, so the budget was 30,380. They spent 25,000, so that 4,000-ish did go back to surplus.
That's correct.
Is that
But we don't lapse the surplus based on individual.
right? Yeah, right.
Next year they buy pumpkins. So
Any more discussion? Seeing none, we'll bring it to a vote. Aye.
Aye.
Eight.
6-1.
We're gonna move on to Pat. Request $32,180, town manager.
That's what we just did.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I lost my line. Libraries, I'm sorry. Libraries. Town manager, $53,245. Select board approved, $53,245. I need a vote.
Make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation of $53,245.
And I have a second. That opens it up for discussion. Anybody who would like to discuss it?
we're on the library board.
So talk about it. Have any questions?
Let's add 2,000 for books.
You got a $13,000 increase in a sense. Me too.
Well, the software went up, cleaning went up, and we have some programming that we contribute towards sewer days. That's where the expenses came
That's
from.
about it.
I think it's a good budget.
What do you think, Sally? Well set. Awful quiet over there. You're awful quiet.
Seeing no discussion, I see no discussion on the floor here, let's take it to a vote, any? Aye,
Aye.
unanimous, I guess, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, she put a little hand up there, yes, okay. Moving on, we're going to code enforcement Town manager request $49,300, select board approved $49,300. I need a motion.
Yep, make a motion that we accept the town manager's recommendation of $49,300.
I have a motion and a second. We are open for discussion again.
The legal last year was because of solar. And that continues to be.
No, shouldn't have been. That legal would have been, last year would have been because of solar ordinance maybe. Legal this year. It's a land use violation. Yeah, so the actual expense is a land use violation here in 2024, that was it. That was resolved after an initial notice. And then the budget always is, you know, as we move forward more aggressively with enforcement, the fact that we would need an attorney to guide matters through. Oftentimes reviewing a notice of violation or generating a new template for us.
I have a question, in discussions, I've been around before, we cleaned up a few junkyards around town here.
We have, I got the code enforcement officer's annual report today, and I think we cleared 11 this last year. I think we have 40 something still outstanding. It's an issue.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah, but I mean, there's progress being made,
There's definite progress being made.
that's what the point I'm trying to get out,
Yes,
is awesome.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I say we bring it to a vote, this. Aye. Yeah, that's unanimous. Moving forward, planning board. Town manager, $4,200, select board, $4,200. And once again, I need a motion.
Motion to accept the town manager recommendation of $4,200.
I have a second. We're open to discussion.
Professional services, could you explain that, Richard? What the increase is when there's nothing in the actual field?
Yep, so there should be something that we'll post. We received an invoice from our contractor last week. So that will post Thursday after tomorrow night's select board meeting. That is the consultant that they've retained to help review and update your shoreline zoning ordinance and your subdivision ordinance. And they are in the process of finalizing a proposed slate of amendments to the shoreline zoning ordinance to be reviewed, considered by voters at town meeting. And then after that, they'll continue on with the subdivision ordinance. They just haven't kept up pace. They're old, outdated largely, and don't align with statute. So that's really what they're pushing for. And this would allow them to complete those two ordinances and then also consider taking on one additional ordinance for review if the newly composed board elects to.
Good work.
Any more discussion, please? Seeing none? Time for a vote, aye.
Aye.
And moving on, philanthropy. Yep, not really, right? The town manager's request, $8,000, select board, $8,000. I need a motion.
Make a motion to accept $8,000 for the town manager recommended.
I have a second. Any discussion?
My discussion is, and I watched the select board, but. So I thought we weren't gonna do it this year. Now we are gonna do it, which I happen to agree with. And I think it's good, we're not gonna go through the list and pick out what they are, but are people. To me, it seems like it doesn't happen in a real organized way. I mean, I think the presentation for the common unity place was good, but that just kind of came in, it seemed out of nowhere, very late in the year. And I just wonder how the process is gonna be to get there.
Don't want to speak for the board, but I will roll up what I think is the sentiment, and that is that I think people are divided on the idea of using public money for private benefit. But they also understand the value of economic development at the greater good through some of these nonprofit organizations. And folks like Common Unity Place, not even located here, but they relieve likely expense burdens that we might otherwise incur. So if it's not the historical society involving themselves with this or that, and us being known as a historic hub, if you will, the sportsman folk maintaining trails, then you've got an organization that ideally will help reduce costs in another pocket. So I think that's how folks have been looking at it, trying to remain positive and support our nonprofits. We haven't discussed the process, but I candidly think, and I don't take this the wrong way, I think it's going to be looser. I think it's not going to be a fill out this paperwork. I think it's more going to be a, are you based in Norridgewock? And if you are, what's your impact in Norridgewock? And talk to us about your organization and why you're asking for the amount that you're asking for. And I think people on the whole will be happier with that if that's the route that they take. Because we're then taking our money and investing it here and seeing a direct return on the people here that live here or people that commonly come here to participate in organizations.
But people would come, there'd be a date or something that people would apply for it.
I don't want to overstep into that, but I'm pretty sure that there'll be something like that. There's been talk about bringing people in on a longer term schedule, spreading it over, 6 or 8 meetings. And that way you don't have organizations coming in feeling like they're competing with one another. But I think that if we continue to move in the direction that we are, we're going to have a very limited number of organizations that would be eligible for funding.
But would the funds all be awarded at one time?
I couldn't speak to that.
What is Common Unity Place?
Common Unity Place is a nonprofit that I'll say spun off from the Methodist Church on Dr. Ann Road. They provide a closed closet, medical needs closet. They also have a meals program. They work closely with United Way. There's a lot of different things.
Thank you.
Do I see any more discussion? Not seeing any more discussion, I done the vote. Aye. And moving on to summer grounds. Town manager's request $48,000, select board recommended $48,000.
We accept the town manager's request at $48,000.
And I have a second. Open for discussion.
Yeah.
Any discussion on this? Nothing? Okay, let's vote. Aye. Debt service. Town managers, $94,811, select board, $94,811. What does the committee be?
Make a motion to accept the town manager's recommendation of $94,008.
We have a first and a second. Open for discussion. And I am not seeing any discussion. Seeing no discussion, let's vote. Aye. And unclassified. Town managers requesting $31,902, select board $31,902.
$31,000.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
I was curious about the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce.
So that is our membership as an employer necessarily to be a part of that organization.
I know it's been floating around. So for that, we get in their book.
We get listed as a member community in their book with a full page listing and description of the community. We're also privy to member discount trainings and seminars that they hold. And then they also have employee discount program where employees of the town can get a name tag and get discounts through member organizations.
That's a question.
I may have read it wrong, but is Norridgewock on the map that they have in that book?
The old map, I believe we were maybe a cookie cutout, and the new map is due to be published in 2025.
It's kind of frustrating to look, and they had Mercer and places beyond Smithfield for $600. So they fixed that.
I can't say one way or another on that.
I thought maybe you had to pay more to get there.
Do I see any more discussion?
Why is there no revenue coming in on the budget here?
There's the unclassified isn't a department that has revenues in general. Each department, like your administration or your code or your fire or public works has a miscellaneous revenue, so if something is related to their department and comes in that doesn't fall into one of those categories, it gets booked there. We don't ever get revenue on this account.
So where does the airport revenue come in?
The yep, nope, good question. So the airport is maintained in a separate fund, which means it's necessarily its own business entity, except we take care of the books and oversee it. They have completely separate bank accounts and whatnot. So what you see here is the town subsidy to the airport of $22,200 a year. We pay that monthly. And then the revenues for the airport are actually held in that airport account, that separate entity.
Thank you.
Do I see any more?
Just out of curiosity, I was just wondering if the town is still giving money to PBS?
So the question was, does the town still give money to PBS? I don't believe we did last year. That is under the local philanthropy. And let me,
Number 17, Article 17.
yeah. The last time Maine Public hasn't received money since before 2022. They haven't submitted a request, or they haven't submitted a request that was in compliance with what the select board had asked. The last time it came up, I think it pretty much boiled down to they already received substantial amount of taxpayer funding. And their nonprofit filing with the federal government showed a substantial amount of holdings. And that the $100 request that they requested from the taxpayers of Norridgewock was something that $100 to be better spent in Norridgewock. Then send it to this large quasi-governmental agency. Be like making a donation to the water district. They have their own source of revenues, they get their own source of money from the government. And we only pay if they bill us.
Do I see any more discussion? Seeing no more discussion, I say we vote. Aye. And. Contingency, yeah. Okay, that takes us to the contingency account. That town manager's request is 10,000, select board request is 25,000. I need a motion on the
Make a
floor.
motion that we go with the select board's recommendation of 25,000.
Second.
I have a first and a second.
And then why would?
Go ahead, start.
So we've always had $10,000 allocated to contingency for that emergency unexpected expense. And $10,000, I don't want to be insensitive, but at some point in time, it was an amount of money that mattered when you're talking about municipal operations. The fact of the matter is that one truck repair or not one load of salt, but 3 loads of salt wipes that out completely. And so why not be better prepared? If you don't spend it, it lapses back into surplus and you can pull it back out. But if you need it, it's there. And so this year was a year the fire department had unexpected expenses and we had to be able to manage that. And so that 10,000 went awful quick. And now they're dipping into reserve to cover off the rest. So they thought it was a more responsible approach. I don't disagree with them, but I did not put that into my initial request.
Mr. Chairman, I think the alternative, especially if your department didn't have a capital reserve account, would be have a special town meeting potentially to spend $5,000 or $10,000. And is that something that's in the best interest of the town? Probably not. I think was the select board's.
Do I see any more discussion? Seeing none, I say we vote. Aye.
I,
Mike. I don't think I understand the issue well enough.
We really want 25,000.
That's correct. Are you in favor or opposed to 25,000?
Which I can't hear.
She's opposed to
That's
25,000.
fine, she's got the right to do that.
Tara,
I'm gonna go with opposed on this one.
Becky, are you no vote?
Richard, can I ask a question? Maybe this has gone too far. But can't money be taken out of the surplus to do this?
So, I mean, yes, you can ask the town meeting for a vote to appropriate surplus to offset unexpected expenses. But that leaves a very wide door open. You can also say, you could also appropriate this out of surplus. Which I think is probably a discussion that will be had down the line. To bring out another 15,000 from surplus, so to say, but. If it doesn't get used, then it will lapse into surplus, and then that money necessarily will be what replenishes it on an annual basis. And the historic usage of contingency is very slim. It's not very often that we use it.
Fire department was
Okay.
covered this year, that was the 10,000.
Fire department is not covered, but it helped them to cover off on an overage.
Go along with the 10, but not the 25, so.
We're voting on 25, okay?
We're voting on 20.
Yeah,
Right,
So it's on 25.
So it's a 4 to. Are you opposed?
Opposed.
Votes 4 to 3. You're in favor.
I am, I'll say, okay.
It's keeping up with inflation.
Yeah.
Hate to say it. Okay, moving on. Capital reserve. Town manager's request is 1,125,000. Select board has no recommendation.
Make a motion that we accept the town meeting's recommendation of $1,125,000 for the.
We have first and we have second. Open for discussion.
Well, this isn't line by line.
This is a line by
This is
line.
line by
This
line.
money will actually be moved from our general fund into. Fire department, we have these accounts at the bank. That's, yep.
So. Instance, recreation asked for 50. You're saying 30. And we don't know where the select board stands.
The select board has not voted.
That's what I mean, haven't voted
No,
yet.
they haven't.
I
They
just
haven't.
wonder if this whole page is something we should vote on after the selectmen.
So it's your pleasure. Customarily, that's how it's been done, but there's nothing that prevents you from saying, you know what, we support it, or we want a lesser number, or we want a bigger number. Because whichever number is bigger or small, the select board's gonna review it anyway. We're gonna have to have another meeting. Because we're gonna have to talk about how the gazebo article gets moved through from the Parks Committee through the select board back to you. We're gonna have to talk about the new community position. If the select board decides to move that through now that they have a budgetary number on it. Or if they're gonna move it through the modified way and how that gets voted on. So we're gonna have to have another meeting.
We just said $15,000.
Why don't we just pass on this?
Would you like to talk about lines? To get some questions out on the floor? And if you have any, because candidly, I don't wanna waste somebody's time
Right,
coming in here to talk to you. If I'm able to satisfy your answers.
right, well, it's open for discussion for sure. Yeah,
Just a thought,
no, I'm with you.
and then if
I'm
you
with
would like to talk with somebody, then I can bring somebody in.
Right,
I like to see what the select board has to say before I. See what their reasoning is, if it's different or.
Almost without exception, the amount is less than what the department was asking for. Separate fire. Roads.
Next.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll take you down through it. Because obviously this is my request, so I can give you my reasoning behind it. The cemetery maintenance, the committee asked for 15,000. I recommended reducing it to 10,000. The reserve account has approximately $35,000 in there already. This is a new account. They've been very productive. They have a list as to what to do, but I thought it difficult to increase that to a number that is greater than what, for instance, we're allocating towards the fire department building this year. Or allowing it to candidly rise close to the level of what you're putting into the library reserve account or the town office reserve account when you have structures that you have to be able to maintain safe public accessibility. So I did recommend reducing that to 10,000. The airport, that's been a standing 10,000. Candidly, I understand the politics of it. And it's not where, could the airport use a greater subsidy? Yes, of course. But I don't believe that it's the time of the economic environment to go and ask for this. And so I maintained that flat. The fire equipment account came in at 110,000. That has to do largely with continuing the path towards saving and executing against the new fire truck contract that was approved at last town meeting, staying the course. And the other component of that is that Mercer pays 17% of their operating budget in their capital reserve account contributions. And so if we don't continue to keep pace with our contributions to the fire accounts, then we're very likely going to go into our local funds and then miss that 17% contribution. So that's why that's there. The libraries is 25,000 requests from the trustees, and I've reduced that to 20. And what you'll see is that anybody that's got a building, with the exception of fire, because they requested less, I've leveled at 20,000. There is a discussion about the potential for a new library, and my belief is that if there is a new library that's coming, that it's not going to have anything largely to do with the reserve account, and the $5,000 contribution to that library account is negligible in the grand scheme of things. I think that there would be another funding source or sources to reconstruct a library. Your public works equipment account, that's been $100,000 for the last couple of years, and I'm asking that it stay there. Just like fire department, it's not getting any cheaper. It's public works have more equipment, and we're gonna have to make some hard decisions. We've got a grader. Well, you want to replace a grader? It's $500,000 estimated. So where do we position ourselves? We know that our fleet is constantly aging, and that seems to be the responsible amount to continue to save towards these expenses. The only thing that the Public Works Department would like this year is to get rid of the two-wheel drive pickup truck that they purchased secondhand from the sewer department and get an actual crew pickup truck that would have a crew cab that would allow the crew to go in a vehicle to training, to the store if they have to go to the store. We just don't have a good vehicle for that right now. So we would get that on a municipal discount program. It would probably be brand new. Then we'd probably look in the budgetary ballpark of $45,000 for that, because it's not a high-end fully loaded piece of equipment, not really a heavy work truck. It's a people mover more than anything. Your the rec department asked for $50,000, and I've reduced that to 30. And I did that knowing that it probably wouldn't be popular. They do have a great list of projects that they want to execute against. There's lighting, there's additional field work in terms of building up the softball field, purchasing a portable scoreboard that would service multiple fields. But in the same vein that the Parks Committee got blasted last year, I didn't want the rec committee to have to suffer that. They do have a plan. I think that they do have public support, but going from 10 to 50 in 1 year, just because we have a pretty comprehensive list of goals, I wasn't quite comfortable with that. The roads request was renewed at $750,000 despite inflation. And that's in reserve. And the road committee has blessed that. The tax assessors renew their request for $25,000 on a tax reval. If everything continues the way that it is, they would like to put an RFP out, a request for proposals for a revaluation likely later this spring, which would be executed in 3 to 4 years down the line. And if budgetary estimates are the way that we think that they're going to be, then that would lead us down the path of having the amount of money that we need when we would get to needing to pay that contract. And then the final is the town office. That's been $20,000 for the last few years. Obviously, we're in an age structure, but we're in a pretty good position. So I've renewed the request as I have for all other buildings at $20,000.
Hard to do. There are things like, and I'm on the cemetery committee, nothing has been done in the cemetery for a huge number of years, and why there's no rush in some ways to fix things there. We do have to take care of our cemeteries, and we had rows that, you know, I think if you could see some pictures from the cemetery committee of how a row would be this, they're falling into each other, you know, wipe out the family here and the family there, or whatever. Every year that you wait, it gets worse and there's more to do. And so far, we've only looked in one cemetery. It's people, it's kind of a commitment, just, you know, you have veterans, you have everything else that you work on. I just think to take 5,000 off of them is just, it's unfortunate. We have somebody right now who's very good at doing things, and
I guess my concern there would be that this is the contribution to the reserve, not an operating budget. And so in the cemetery committee, I work closely with you guys and I understand what we're doing, but if you wanted to spend $40,000 in the next 5 years, I don't think we could, because there's not contractor availability. And so trying to keep things in line proportionately from one department to the next wasn't a slight at the work that you folks have done with Joe or whatnot. I think it was just trying to better align with the other departments.
a contractor like that is going to become less and less available over time. It's a
Right.
huge, I was going to say dying breed, and I apologize, but
That's a reality.
With a dying breed.
That's my concern, just people even that are interested in whatever, but I know that's a hard thing to fill. And the other thing, parks with all their ambitions and everything that they have. And I think parks is one place that really is truly economic development. Recreation is nice, but I don't think bring recreation down me, but it's, if you're comparing them for what they can do for the town, a good park has been proven to bring people into business. Recreation brings it in when we had the tournaments from other towns and things like that coming in.
Get busy and not doing drugs.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great thing. I mean, I think they've got plenty of money. That's going from 50 to getting 30. We're just talking about $5,000 difference on what parks asked for or cemetery asked. It's quite a difference. And look at the difference in those budgets to begin with.
Right.
You really, we shouldn't be comparing.
Well, it's different in proportions.
I think one of the reason why I recommended reducing the parks budget is we have to understand that these buildings aren't free, the replacement value of them down the line. And we'll be faced with, you know, resurfacing projects or things like that. And they do have buildings now and docks now that aren't free, but they also submitted a request for outright contribution for a gazebo. So that normally would be saved for maybe over the course of 5 or 6 years, but the timing seemed right on the second time around, and so they've renewed that. So in the same vein as the library, I think if the library comes, then there would be a different funding source largely. And Parks Committee is hopeful that if the gazebo is approved, there would be a different funding source other than their currently non-existent account. I mean, I think it's got 10,000 in it right now. the thing that they have that you could buy for $10,000. We replaced one short 3-foot section of tunnel on the playground this year, and it was $1,600.
So the thing these people have to do, the cemetery people, the library, parks, recreation, have to go to the meeting tomorrow night.
No, the select board hasn't reviewed it. The select board, they've got all the information that all its committees have requested.
Aren't they voting tomorrow?
Pardon?
Wouldn't they be voting tomorrow?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the chair of the cemetery committee is coming tomorrow. She picked the date. The parks committee chair is coming tomorrow. The rec committee is well represented. But that doesn't seem to be an item here today. So I mean, it's really those two and $5,000, which, you know, if I wasn't trying to maintain a balanced budget and get everybody everything that they wanted, I probably would have thrown it in there. But that money's probably better spent in contingency than it would be inflated somebody's reserve account, just for the sake of politicking one department over another, which is necessarily what it is. The towns people have always been good about, you know, you're responsible with what we give you. If you need it, we'll give it to you. And if the rec committee is able to pull together a plan for lighting, then all you could do is go to the select board and say, look, we're pretty close. What do you think? And it will happen in the next 12 months by and large. If people are willing to work for it and there's public support. But I candidly, I think the Parks Committee would much rather see an allocation for their gazebo than just a contribution to the reserve account. It's a bigger picture and a bigger economic impact on that.
So can we make a motion to table it until the select board does their voting and take it up at the next meeting?
Yeah, we don't even need a motion to table necessarily.
Right.
You just want to pass it over. I just thought it would be an opportunity to get some discussion out there, and if you had any questions about it or want a specific follow-up, that we could do that.
You said we'll be meeting again anyway, right?
Correct. But the idea of trying to scratch the surface on these capital reserve accounts is to figure out if there's going to be any concern about the requests, and if we need additional documentation, you know.
I guess what I would say, we ought to vote to see if we want to table it, or we want to vote to pass it or disapprove it.
You call for a motion.
Calling for a motion.
So we've already got a motion.
I think you have a motion.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The motion on the floor is to recommend the amount I've submitted.
That's, yeah, you're right. You're correct. So the motion's on the floor, been seconded. We've had a discussion. Any more discussion? Seeing none. I say we vote. Aye.
Aye.
What's that?
Tara, are you a vote against? I'm assuming?
I do, yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's all good.
So we will need to iron, do you want to take a look at revenues? Revenues? Associate department revenues is on the bottom half of each of your departments, but really you've got a couple large components to revenues. And that is the first being excise tax. Excise tax is collected on your motor vehicle registration. That money stays with the town. This last year, we collected just about $820,000. That gets allocated to public works. The money is intended for roads and road improvements, and so that is why we budget it that way. We collected 820. I'm asking for that budget line to increase by 40,000, 720,000 for the sake of conservative budgeting, and to help keep your taxes flat or close to it. That's one major component. The next major component that you have is your host community fees. That's from waste management. Last year we received, well, that might be short. Let me take a quick look. Year to date, we had received 1.34 million. Last year we budgeted 875,000 to offset taxes, in host community fees. This year, I'm recommending we realize more of that revenue and increase the amount to 1.075. Any questions about that, the way that it works? I'm just trying to double check on my fees received.
Trying to see where you are.
Sorry,
Second page.
yeah, it should be on the second page, so
Revenue.
revenues,
Yeah,
and then at the bottom of that,
okay,
it should have some italicized first part KRDA.
Yeah.
Those are all local ones that we have to go in and fill in. So I'm still missing a check for December on waste management fees received. So, you know, conservatively, that's another 100,000 that we would get there. Their facility is going to start taking in additional material the next year. We're also going to get the CPI increase on the rate. So it's fair to say that it would be at least what we received this year, if not more. And again, I think that there's that balance of holding money in town coffers versus realizing what we actually have for revenues. So I did leverage that quite plainly to try and drive the number flat. And so my budget, as it was presented, was up just $3,000 to $4,000 over last year's. That considers your other line on your summary. It is an other line, and that is a budgetary estimate for the community position that we'll talk about at the next meeting, and then also the gazebo request from the Parks Committee. My budget built together includes those expenses with these revenues, and you're at about $4,000 more than last year.
Sorry, just to be clear, so you've included the gazebo and the new position. And the total budget is only up $4,000 over last year.
That's correct. Net to taxation from the town.
Correct.
So that's what the 123,000 is.
That's the 75,000 for the gazebo.
Position.
And then what I had offered to the select board at their last meeting, which we didn't really get into, but was the ability to fund the community position year one partially. We're obviously not going to hire it out in the first quarter, so could you budget it for 3 quarters in an effort to phase it in? And so that's what I budgeted. I budgeted the 48, I think it was, yes. If I planned budgetarily to start in April, which is not
It
realistic.
took a while. I was trying to think, what are you offering this person?
Right, no, that's based on a budgeted wage of $24 an hour, full health insurance, retirement, paid leave, your taxes, a small uniform allowance, budgeting that out.
You'd be great there.
I'm not doing anything.
That's right.
Jennifer's getting it.
And one of the things is do you fund it at the full time? Do you want a full-time position when you have that price tag? Is it gonna be something that you're gonna hire and realize that that's just not a job that we find that value in? I don't believe that, but it's possible. It's also, you know, a job that's gonna require a certain type of person that's gonna be successful.
It's a mix of skills that I find hard to combine. People, marketing, parents.
I mean, right now, we're very fortunate in the rec program director that we have. And she has no interest in the job, so I'll talk plainly about it. But she's very good with the kids, but her professional job is assisted living facility, and she's a director of programming for them too. So she sees both sides of it, and she's common sense, and it's just, I'm kind of irritated that I can't recruit her. But you know, it's gonna take somebody like that with that kind of a personality, I think, to do it and do it well. And not that this job description that we drafted out won't change, and it's obviously gonna change. But I think to the
How
benefit.
does it work? Is so much of their time is weekends and what do you pay them the same rate if it's a Saturday? I mean, I guess the librarian gets the same.
It's difficult, and we've talked about flexible schedules, the ability to work remotely. Where does somebody work? Well, you know, maybe they're not gonna be working in the office a lot during baseball, softball season, but they're gonna have a laptop and they can be at the snack shack or something like that. It's gonna be a very non-traditional role, I think, on the whole, that You need that really trustworthy individual that has the ability to self-guide, and put in what they're saying they're putting in. Well, so yeah, my budget does include that, but it's a 3/4 funding of that role for year one, not the 400%.
And 50 is probably more realistic by the time you advertise and get somebody on board. 50%, it's probably more realistic.
Right, but I didn't want to undersell something.
Sure.
The overtime, it said something, you're hiring for 32, and then is there 8 hours?
So there was this discussion of, is it gonna be a 32-hour position, is it gonna be a 40-hour position? And I think that's something that ultimately would be hammered out down the line. I have budgeted the job for this number, at the 40 hours a week.
40 hours?
I budgeted it at 40 hours a week. I also budgeted it with a 5% overtime contingency. Knowing that we're allowing them flex schedule, but sometimes even a flexible schedule doesn't get you out of that overtime box. So
For like Osulo days, weekends, I mean, those big event week, you're gonna be.
you're gonna have a heavy week before
Yeah.
kind of thing, but you're gonna have weeks where you don't have anything.
Must have to pay them by the month or whatever.
Well, and you get into the talk about salaries and things like that, and the way that the state of Maine's trended. And its policy is that then you end up paying them anyway because they're not exempt because of the nature of their duties and the salary that the state of Maine wants you to pay. In order to exempt them, so. It's a pretty high threshold. To meet in order to exempt an employee, even if they're salaried. They're still tracking hours.
Mr. Chairman, that $4,000 net increase to taxation over the last year-ish. Round number. Don't forget, there's an additional 1% for your new family and medical leave act for all employees. So 1% of wages. And so that makes that even a little bit more impressive to me.
So do we need a motion on revenues?
If you'd like to. You don't have to, you can wait until you get a total picture together.
And the total picture would be.
If a gazebo or a community position is excluded, then you may elect to hold. Waste management revenues in waste management reserve account as opposed to using it to offset taxes. I candidly, if one of those doesn't get pushed, if gazebo doesn't get put to voters. Or a community position doesn't get put towards voters, I wouldn't recommend utilizing those revenues to offset taxation. Those are used to fund missions, projects that I think have a general broad benefit. And my intention of recommending that amount wasn't to reduce taxes, it was to accommodate those requirements.
And those decisions are ultimately made by the select board, whether or not they want to put them in this.
Right, now, if they say, no, we don't wanna do the gazebo, but you folks say, we do wanna do the gazebo. They're not required to, a past practice that said they would warrant the article and they would put select board recommends not approve.
I mean, that discussion would have to vote on the floor at the town meeting
Or by secret ballot,
or by secret.
and that's, that's the other, there's been discussion amongst the select board that they want it secret ballot. Whether it wants to be excluded, but then there's also the discussion that you get. More public discourse and discussion about projects like that on the floor of town meeting. But then there's also folks that feel obligated to vote for something because we're all looking at you, how are you gonna vote about?
How you gonna vote?
gazebo?
No, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's truth to all of that.
So it makes it very hard though, at $75,000. You'd have it in the budget. It could possibly be voted down. So that's $75,000 then.
So you're saying, yeah, it's in the budget,
It's
In the budget.
already.
and then what happens to
You have to vote it
75?
down,
Can't change the
your taxation.
You can't change the tax.
Right. The leverage that you would have then is when you put your total picture together, there's that surplus, the unassigned fund balance that you used. And if it were me and everything went through the way that you wanted, but you didn't wanna just. You know, artificially deflate taxes is what it is. You would reduce the amount of contingent, you reduce the amount of surplus. To offset taxation and keep it right.
Right.
Because the last thing you wanna do, and it sounds government employee, but even as a taxpayer in my hometown. I don't want my tax bill to go down $100 this year to go up $300 next year. It's better to have something that's a little bit more consistent. Even if it is an upward trend, it's better to have something that's more consistent.
Tara has a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I've just got a question. I'm not understanding like how things come forward. With the gazebo, I know has been talked about, but in comparison, you go back to the rec department and they've been talking about the fields and redoing the fields and on for I don't know how long. So who and how do things get prioritized and brought to the voters this way? I don't know, and I'm asking that question.
So when there are relevant committees, like the road committee meets on the larger road projects, they don't meet on public works, but we have the parks committee, we have the rec committee that meets and reviews those. They develop their list of priorities. They ask me largely to put numbers to them, then they prioritize them internally, and then make their number. That's how they make their request. So your rec budget that you have, the rec department met in the rec committee met in the last month or so, sat down, looked at these numbers. That's where they made the adjustments to wages, wage request. And they also reviewed the request for the capital account, the reserve account.
But the gazebo isn't either in the operating or the capital.
Sorry, yeah,
Right.
So go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm still not understanding because like softball field, playing fields has been an issue. They've been asking for money. The town hasn't done anything. All of a sudden now we have more programs happening down there and they want a new gazebo. This gets pushed forward in front of the rec committees. And I'm just wondering why and how that happens.
So the Parks Committee came to the Select Board Budget Committee last year with a proposal of a gazebo. And they were respectfully turned away and said, come back with a bigger plan for what you're looking for. And so that's why the Parks Committee has this more media document to try to substantiate what they've done. I think the other thing that they've done is they were able to secure additional private money to support their music series. And that really kind of blew up this summer and gives you the tangible, maybe if you will, benefit of a new gazebo this year. The rec department, it's not that they're being slighted by any stretch. We went to townspeople with a one-off article 3 or 4 years ago. And that was in the same form that the gazebo question is being formed. And that was to take money from surplus to do the drainage project on the field. We put that out to bid. We couldn't get a bidder. And then we were able, Brian Luce, NF Luce, ended up coming in and putting an offer in outside of the bid scope. And we were able to do that at that point in time. So there have been significant improvements to the ball field. And we understand that there, just like anything, there's constant need for improvements. They're very happy with what they have, but they see opportunity. And so, things like lighting, I think that we were surprised. I was surprised by how reasonable the price was compared to what I expected it to be.
And I don't know how we did that.
Right, but I don't even, we got a ballpark number, what we thought for what another field had been done in the last 5 years. And we're like, wow, that's really affordable. And so I think that obviously there's some things that need to be hammered out with the rec, but we've been investing in programs. And I think that the 50,000 was let's send a message that we have a lot that we want to get done and the impact of our program for the community in general. But again, I have to try to balance. I want to give everybody everything that they want, but you can't just do that all the time. There's got to be some rationale as to why we're putting it in your savings account, what we're putting in your savings account, even if you have a golden plan.
So if these
Thank
two
you.
things
Yep.
go through, would there always be another line here?
So, yeah, probably.
We'll go back to parks and.
No, because it just looks funny.
How to divide that.
Pardon?
What would you do a year from now with that person? Would they be part of,
Well, that's gonna be a discussion that we'll have to
they have
have.
to split it?
I mean, candidly, it's like, well, Peter, I'll say, Peter is finance, the bookkeeper gets, paid, only 75% of his wage benefit comes out of admin. And then 25 comes from sewer and airport. So it could be like that. I know John's always been a proponent of what's the cost of maintaining a cemetery?
Just for example, summer grounds, I have a real hard time with that because it's not a summer grounds budget, it's a parks and recreation, it's a cemetery, it's a library, you know. But there's a bookkeeping piece and it's too hard to allocate. And
I don't get allocated up, I'm just admin, but I spend an amount, every department gets me. So it's very likely that if something like this continued, I would recommend looking at either under, it's probably under admin is where it would go. Sure. Just because it's a multifaceted cross department role. Not perfect. Far from it.
Any more discussion? Seeing no more,
You can just pass over revenues until
yeah,
you get the other two projects under your
right,
program. So your next meeting will do the two topics, the Parks Committee request for the gazebo. Then you can consider the new position if you want to, and then we'll talk about revenues. We'll talk about the use of the undesignated fund surplus to offset taxation. And as far as I know, as of right now, that's it. And then you'll have the ability, so the other thing is, the select board may recall one or two budgets tomorrow night. There'll at least be discussion about it and the compensation of elected officials. There's always a discussion about, well, we paid too much or we paid too little. And at the last meeting, we dipped our toes into, if you're gonna be compensated, should it be tied to actual participation or attendance in the meeting? And so it would move, say, select board members, if it moves through, it would transition them from a $1,200 a year stipend to a $75 a meeting style. Or if you're on the planning board, you just get $500. Well, the planning board could have 3 meetings, but they could have 12. But they get the 500, same with the tax assessors, they get $500. 2 meetings, 4 meetings.
When did the planning boards change? I know it wasn't paid when I was on, it changed the next year, but I thought it was gonna be each meeting.
Yep, and it's not been, because that's just not been the way that it's structured, but I'd say there's a pretty evenly distributed perspective on this from the select
It's
board.
very hard to tell listening to it.
Right, and so it's been asked to be placed on the next agenda. And if they do move in that direction, I think that we could see some of these numbers change. And you would obviously will recall that for your
But
consideration
they
as well.
weren't big amounts, the elected offices.
17.
No, but if they go up, you oughta, just in the same way that they'll review what you vote on. You would obviously want the ability to say, we want, what's our number? And maybe it's a program discussion that you wanna have, is that something that you believe in? Well, if you did that, that's gonna reopen up your own.
Make a motion to adjourn, you know,
No, I need, please just schedule the next meeting.
we gotta work on what. Who's available when? What's a good? What's your schedule look like?
So I'm out next week, and so that then moves you to,
Yeah. Whoops, did I say that out loud?
you know, the last time I took a week off, neither do I.
I don't remember it.
I don't think I ever have. Seriously, I don't think I ever have.
What's that?
I never have taken a full week.
You've never taken a full week off since you've been town manager?
No,
Really?
no. So I'm back the 21st. And
So
I
we're probably all
can
free
do,
on the 20th.
pardon?
So we're probably all free on the 20th.
Yeah,
Probably nobody's working.
so I've got Tuesday, Thursday that week.
Available?
Yep, 21st and 23rd.
How's Tuesday, though?
Not good for me.
Not good for you? You have no idea?
I think I'm free, but I'm not 100% sure, so.
The benefit of doing that Tuesday is that that would be before the select board met again. So we'd have a select board meeting down, but then they would meet again, just like tonight. Tuesday, the 21st.
At 6.
I can use that.
Yeah.
That works.
The 21st at 6.
I'd have to do 6. 21st is. Good plan.
Sounds great to me.
I have training that night in Smithfield. But I think you're done with fire. Is there any reason anybody thinks that fire may?
Be done, right?
You will know tomorrow night.
Well, that's fair.
If the select board revisits on the matters, the board won't have a reason to recall. If they do,
Oh, no,
if we get an idea, somebody will suspend the meeting or move on to something else until we can get folks here to talk about it.
What do you got for training on Smithfield?
Command class. With Romanian fire training, you got invited to Smithfield. Which is nice to know.
Yeah.
So is it set for January 21st, Tuesday at 6 p.m.?
Yes,
Perfect.
and I will get an agenda out to you, and if there's any updates, I'll get that out Thursday or Friday.
So you're gonna send us another packet, is basically what you're saying?
I will, yes, and what I'll do is if you don't pick them up before Monday or Tuesday of next week, then I'll have Peter talk them in the midways, like in your mailbox. Yep, just so that everybody knows.
The only suggestion I can put a little cover letter on it with the date, time, and
Yep, you'll have an agenda. Yep,
with that all being said, I guess we're ready to adjourn. I have a motion. I have a second. This meeting is over.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Hi, Tara.
Bye. Thank you.